Hello everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Hello. We're also live on TikTok at the same time right now, so you might hear a little bit of, you might hear the odd thing here or there. We will.
How do I sound? Do I sound alright?
Yeah, you sound fine.
Oh, okay, because I don't know if it's going to take up a shit ton of internet, me being live on the TikTok at the same time.
You'll be fine. Yeah.
Well, I'm technically not live, but they can hear me.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the audio on my phone pretty much down to 0, so then there's no, echoey through.
Oh, that's the same thing with me.
Yeah, so...
Because you just hear it there, and hearing double of me is not what you want to hear, trust me.
I mean, I can, literally hear, well, I can hear everything that you're saying anyway, so I was like, wait, why have I got my audio on? There is literally no point. But... yeah, so welcome back to the True Crime Friday podcast, everyone. Everyone on TikTok who are watching or might watch in the future, because I'm going to let
Who is?
Sorry, I'm very.
Who's floating about?
Who's floating about today? Hello, welcome to the True Crime Friday podcast. For new listeners, if you are not aware, this is a podcast that we do every single Friday, and it's about a different true crime case every week. We take turns each week on who picks what case. And we kind of present it to each other without letting the other know in advance what the case is. So you get the full shock factor if you've never heard about the case before, or you get the, oh, I've heard about this case, I will jump in on the odd occasion kind of moment. But today's episode, my boss recommended this episode.
Hey, I've had a few folk that have said, hey, what about this, what about that? So... it seems as though quite a few people who tend to like true crime or know about stuff go, hey, here's a suggestion, so take it.
Yeah, my boss recommended me this episode. She was like, Lauren, have you ever actually heard about this case before? And I was like, no. And then she told me the name of it. I looked it up. I did not think it was going to be this long. It was halfway through doing the research. I was like, oh shit, there's so much to unpack with this case. So, it's going to be interesting, to say the very least. It is one of those cases where it's horrific. However, the people that we're going to be talking about who were arrested for the crime actually have been released based on they didn't actually ever do it. They were falsely accused.
Oh, so it's more than one then?
Yes, 3 teenagers were arrested for this crime. They were wrongfully accused of it based on their how they are, what the community that they were in. They were goths. I'm going to point out this way. They were goths, they liked heavy metal, and this was during the time when people saw people who were goths and who listened to heavy metal as Satanists and would do sacrifices in the woods and all this kind of crap. And just based on the fact that they got into a little bit of mischief and they did the odd shoplifting, and because they were the way they were in what their interests were, the police were immediately like, they did it, and put them in prison. And they got released. They have had movies about them, so you might recognise it. I don't know. You might recognise it based on movies.
Movies, 3 goths?
Maybe?
No.
I don't know, this could be interesting.
I feel like I should, but I can't think of anything other than the most notorious case of someone who was goth that got murdered, Sophie. But
we've already done we've already done the episode on Sophie Lancaster.
So I can't think of anything else. So I feel like I should know. No idea.
So this week the episode is on the West Memphis Three. Ring any bells?
No. Memphis 3.
The West Memphis 3.
No idea. Well, this is clearly American.
It's American. It's an American case, and I didn't know anything about it until my boss, Izzy, shout out to Izzy, recommended me this. She won't see this. She doesn't use social media, but she recommended this episode.
Never. Nope.
And
even if you show me an image, no idea. I haven't even heard that.
Fair enough.
And there's a movie, so I know absolutely nothing.
There's a few movies.
Wow, okay.
There's a few movies, and they helped produce a couple of them as well when they got out. So,
well, hey, I mean, if you make a movie on someone and the person that you're making the movie on has a hand in it, should be a better movie because you had actual first-hand help from someone who would give the truth. Well, they could lie, but in reality, they'd probably tell it how it is, other than, you know, when it's like, when, not that I've seen much movies on true crime stuff, but they tend to not tell it 100% how it is, just for the sake of it being a movie.
No, yeah, you got a good point, yeah. So, yeah, the West Memphis Three. So before we get into this episode, I do have to do a very quick disclaimer on what this may be about. We will be talking about child death again. I'm so sorry. I know that the past few episodes have been kind of related to that. But child death will be mentioned. It will be very graphic. And I will warn you when we go into graphic content about the case. So, apologies for that. But if this is something you're not comfortable with, you have the option to turn off the live now, to turn the episode off now. We do have more lighter-hearted episodes if you would prefer that, but I do have to warn you, this is very much an aimed at children episode, horrifically. So, the West Memphis Three are 3 men convicted as teenagers in 1994 of the 1993 murders of 3 boys in West Memphis, Arkansas in the US. Damien Eccles was sentenced to death. Jesse Kelly Jr. was sentenced to life imprisonment plus 2 20-year sentences, and Jason Baldwin to life imprisonment.
So what, one that's been sentenced to death, why is he... Did they believe he's the one and the other 2 are just there?
There was a lot of connections with the case that we will go into, but basically the police believed that Damien was the ringleader and did a lot of the additional stuff.
Obviously he's not dead, because if they've all been released.
He's not dead, though. No, Damien Eccles is still alive.
Which makes it worse. It makes it ever so worse, the fact that you've said it's a wrongly convicted case, where someone gets sentenced to death, and they... Obviously, that goes ahead, and then they found out, oh no, it wasn't them. And that's like the biggest, oh shit, I think you can get when it comes to true crime, is sentencing someone to death and realizing it wasn't them, and then you've just basically killed an innocent person.
Yeah.
Under the hands of the law.
Yeah. So, during the trial, the prosecution asserted that the 3 teenagers killed the children as part of a satanic ritual, which was not true in the slightest.
I mean, we have touched on this slightly, on a couple cases where people had beliefs of satanic, but I always think that's a bit bullshit. I mean, I don't worship the devil. People listening now might worship the devil, but I always think that that's such bullshit, man.
Yeah.
People having that whole... And I know actual cults exist. I know... doesn't Jared Leto have a cult?
He's suspected of having a cult. It doesn't look good when you look at the footage, to be completely honest. It does look very culty, but I also feel like when you see stuff like what Jared Leto's... whatever he's up to, whenever someone says to them, oh, this looks like a cult, and then he turns around and goes, everyone says that it's not a cult, it kind of gives the same energy as people who are in a pyramid scheme and are flat out refusing it, to believe that that's the case. Well,
everyone just thinks cult's a bad thing. More than likely. But it's I just find the whole satanic cult, because I'd be hard-pressed to find someone near here who genuinely believes in a satanic cult and genuinely sacrifices people to the devil.
I think it's just...
I mean, it's such like a fairy tale sort of made-up thing.
It's a whole psychological thing, though, isn't it? Like, it's a lot of brainwashing.
And people play off that, and I think we'll maybe touch into this as well, just like I can see by some of the tops that the boys are wearing, is that certain bands and metal play off the whole satanic imagery.
Yeah.
Because I know that I watched the Wikipedia Fact or Fiction, which is a great series. I don't know if you've seen it, Lauren. It's done by the channel Loudwire. It's great because they get to set the story straight, and I love the one with Tom Araya from Slayer. They said they used that for more like a shock factor because they didn't like how the Hollywood crowd, I guess, they were, bands like Motley Crue and that, had all this like glammy sort of image, and they went, well, if we just use...
Wait. Motley Crue literally did the same thing with the shock factor thing, with the whole shout the devil thing, with all the pentagrams. They did the exact thing.
But I don't know what he meant when he said like LA crowd. I'm assuming he was meaning like some glam band, something like that. I didn't know if Motley Crue did that, but I know he said that he used that for like a shock value.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just been tied to metal music, where some people have gone, oh, metal music's a bit heavy, and then because some of them have used the devil in their imagery that they just assume that then people just assume that that's tied to a satanic cult. And we talked about that when we did the Teenage Dirtbag case.
Also, it's a good thing to point out with people saying like using pentagrams makes you satanic. Pentagrams are not satanic. Pentagrams are from Wicca. They are from paganism, and they're more protection against evil than anything. It's just fucking Christianity that took it and turned it on its head. That's literally fact.
And a few people
with me on it. It's a fact.
No, and I think. A few people who are listening as well will probably be the same with us. They get so peed off when, I guess, people who don't listen to like metal music or anything like that, or don't know what the pentagram is, and they just assume that because someone like that in the slightest, that makes them a satanic person, which I absolutely disagree with. And this is probably what we're going to touch upon in the case where, well, as you just said, they asserted the juveniles killed them as part of a satanic ritual. They probably just said, oh, well, he liked Metallica. Boof, he's a Satanist. There we go. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what I hate, because I wouldn't go into subculture or something I don't know and then start throwing stuff willy-nilly around, not knowing anything, because that's when it gets so fucking peed off. And I wasn't live during the 90s, but I know fine well from so many times in the 90s and 2000s, kids appearing on TV that dressed goth, and they were on like those reality shows where they were like, I believe my son is a Satanist. Really? He listens to Marilyn Manson. And it's like, and then the crowd are just like, oh my God. And you sit there and you go, this crowd just brainwashed. Someone said Marilyn Manson satanic, and they instantly went, well, that's it. And it's like, whoa, hold the boat, man.
I mean, back in the 90s, ignore all that. However, if you're listening to Marilyn Manson in 2024, I'm gonna call you a wrong'un. I'm calling you a wrong'un. I'm calling you every name under sun. If you're in 2024 and still respecting Marilyn Manson, I get remove the artist from the music, but there's a line, and we all know there's a line.
Yeah, well, I feel like we're going to probably touch upon areas that's kind of pee me off, at least, that they're assuming they're satanic.
There's a lot of issues with the police in this case. Shock horror.
They weren't satanic, no.
They weren't satanic, no.
No, but they just got pinned as that. Yes. And then once you're pinned as this, and news gets word of it, then, you know, it's hard to undo that. So
yeah, that's your reputation at the end of the day, and that's really annoying. So I'm going to start off the case by going into a little bit about the 3 teenagers that were falsely accused. And then we're going to go into the victims and then everything that happened and so on. So Damien Wayne Eccles, he was the one who got put on death row for this. He was born Michael Wayne Hutchison on the 11th of December 1974. He lived with his mother and father until they got divorced when he was 8 years old. The family frequently moved, and Damien would attend 8 schools before the age of 10. At the age of 13, he took a new name with the last name of his stepfather, Jack Eccles. The family settled in West Memphis, Arkansas, where Damien attended school, and he was still in the 9th grade by the age of 17. When he was on death row, he was locked down 23 hours per day at the Varna unit at Supermax. He entered the system on the 19th of March 1994, and from prison in 1999, he got married to a landscape architect called Laurie Davis, and after his release, the two of them moved to New York City. I'm going to obviously tell you the nice things that have happened in their life since, obviously.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I've just realised this now. It said West Memphis, and I was a bit confused. I was like, I thought Memphis was in Tennessee, but I didn't realise that it's literally just across the river. Mm-hmm. It is where they're from. I love my geography, so I was... Because I saw West Memphis, and I'm instantly thinking Elvis, obviously, but I just did not realise that Memphis was literally just across the river. Because you can probably guess what I'm doing in the background. Whenever we do this, I'm looking around the area, seeing how it is. It's exactly what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Yeah, you go on Google Maps, don't you, and try and look everywhere.
Well, yeah, I know.
For those who are new listeners, whenever we do a case and it has, like, an address of where the crimes got committed, Matt is definitely looking up the address.
Well, I look around the area just to kind of get... Well, I do it for more a visual thing because I don't know if anyone else is the same. When people tell stories, I visualize it. I'm a visual person in my head, so that's when I go on the map so I can see the area. So when you're telling it, I can kind of envision what it's like because, you know, it's not like if I just envision it happening, okay, and I just envision an area around here. That's you don't get the sort of thing. So I try and look around the area, and plus if there's certain locations, I see what they are now. Because when you look at an image, you see it back then, but seeing it now and the sort of contrast. But yeah, I'm looking at West Memphis right now, so continue, sorry.
So Damien, with his habits of dressing in black and listening to heavy metal music, he was a misfit within the local community when he was a teenager, and he also wrote dark and expressive poems. He is a true goth. That's all that's told me. He's a true goth. He's writing his dark and expressive poems. He's actually edgy. He's not fake edgy. He's edgy. Especially in the 90s. Bear in mind, this is like mid-90s, so grunge is a major thing at this point, and I bet for a fact he hated it. Because true metalheads hated the fucking grunge scene when it came about.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. But, so obviously he was on death row. He was technically in solitary confinement while he was on death row, and he was locked away for 23 hours per day, which would send anyone a bit insane and send their mental stability plummeting. So his mental stability during the years immediately, like, afterwards, and also prior to the murders and during his trial, was a big focus, apparently, for the legal team and their appeal attempts. But it obviously plummeted a lot while he was on death row, as it would for anyone, especially when you're an innocent person, and you know you're innocent, but they treat you like a criminal. Your mind's going to get skewed. In his efforts to win a new trial when he was on death row, Damien, who was 27 at the time of his appeal, claimed he was incompetent to stand trial because of a history of mental illness. The record on appeal spells out a long history of his mental health problems, including a 5th of May 1992 Arkansas Department of Youth Services referral for possible mental illnesses, a year to the day before the murders. So a lot of the whole thing during trying to pin the murders on the three teenagers was not just they're goths, but also because they weren't mentally well, which is probably why they kind of were associated with each other. Hi, my cat is meowing. I've got the fan on, it's not that warm in here. But they basically looked at their mental illness history and pinned that as another reason on why they did the crimes, which I think is so out of order, because we've said this on the podcast quite a few times on previous episodes. Whenever they say, this person had this mental health issue, this person had this mental health issue, I go, shut the fuck up, that should not be connected. It's like, this person had depression, and that should not be connected. This person had autism, and that should not be connected. Leave it alone. Jesse Miss Kelly was the next teenager. He was born on the 10th of July 1975. He was arrested in connection to the murders on the 5th of May 1993, the same as Eccles. After a reported 12 hours of interrogation by police, Jesse, who has an IQ of 72, which is not very high obviously, confessed to the murders and implicated Charles and Damien. However, the confession was at odds with facts known by police, such as the time of the murders, so they kind of fed him the facts. Like that weird interrogation tactic where they feed you the facts and it kind of goes in your head. I don't know. It's a weird thing that they have been known to do. Under the Bruton rule, his confession could not be admitted against his co-defendants, and he was tried separately. Jesse was convicted by a jury of 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. The court sentenced him to life plus 40 years in prison. He is now a producer. He has produced movies, obviously, about the crimes, mostly known for The Devil's Knot, which came out in 2013, if you recognise that movie. Since being released from prison, Jesse has become engaged to his high school sweetheart, which I think is amazing that she stuck by him all those years, despite him being in prison, and enrolled in a community college to train as an auto mechanic. I like that they got afterwards, they gotten away from everything and actually started a new life. The next one is Charles Jason Baldwin. He was born on the 11th of April 1977. Baldwin pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder while still asserting his innocence. So they made him plead guilty despite him claiming multiple times that he was innocent. He was initially resistant to agree to this deal, insisting as a matter of principle that he would not plead guilty to something that he did not do. He then realised he has said that his refusal would have meant that Damien stayed on death row, and he said this was not justice, however they're trying to kill Damien. And they said to him if he pleaded not guilty, Damien would have stayed on death row, and he wanted to make sure that Damien would not stay on death row. But that happened anyway. Since his release, Jason has moved to Seattle to live with friends. He's in a relationship with a woman who he befriended while he was in prison. He has stated that he plans on enrolling in college to become a lawyer in order to help wrongfully convicted people to prove their innocence. Jason said in a 2011 interview with Piers Morgan that he worked for a construction company and he was learning how to drive. So they've had decent lives afterwards, but now unfortunately we do have to go into the nitty-gritty part, which is going into the victims who were part of this crime. So the victims in this were Steve Edward Branch, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore. They were all second graders at Weaver Elementary School. Each of them achieved the rank of Wolf in the local Cub Scout pack and were all best friends. It's when you say, like, second graders that makes you realise how young they actually were and how horrendous this is going to be.
Yeah, I just had to check. When it said Michael Moore, I'm like, I'm sure that's a famous person, and it is. They just happen to share the same name.
Yeah. I mean, I saw the last name Byers, and my brain immediately went to Stranger Things.
Wait, who from Stranger? I don't know any Stranger Things actors.
No, I mean, like, one of the characters.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, mine was an actual person.
No, like Byers, I immediately...
No, he did bowling for Columbine. Oh, I didn't need to watch that film. I got a copy of it.
So Steve Edward Branch was the son of Stephen and Pamela Branch, who divorced when he was an infant. His mother was awarded custody and later married a man named Terry Hobbs. Steve was 8 years old when he passed away. He was 4'2", he weighed 65 pounds and had blonde hair. He was last seen wearing blue jeans and a white t-shirt and riding a black and red bike. He was an honor student. He lived with his mother, Pamela Hobbs, and his stepfather, Terry Hobbs, and a 4-year-old half-sister called Amanda. Steve is buried in Mount Zion Cemetery in Steele, Missouri. Christopher Byers was born to Melissa D. Fur and Ricky Murray. His parents also divorced when he was only 4 years old, and shortly afterward his mother married John Mark Byers, who adopted him. He was 8 years old, 4 foot tall, weighed 52 pounds, and had light brown hair. He was last seen wearing blue jeans, dark shoes, and a white long-sleeve shirt. He lived with his mother, Sharon Melissa Byers, his adopted father, John Mark Byers, and his stepbrother, Sean Ryan Clark, who was 13 years old. According to his mother, Christopher was a typical 8-year-old. He believed in the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. Christopher Mark Byers is buried in Forest Hill Cemetery in Memphis, Tennessee. Michael Moore was the son of Todd and Dana Moore. He was 8 years old, 4'2" tall, weighed 55 pounds, and had brown hair. He was last seen wearing blue pants, a blue Boy Scouts of America t-shirt, an orange and blue Boy Scout hat, and riding a light green bike. Michael enjoyed wearing his Scout uniform even when he wasn't at meetings. He was considered the leader of the three. He lived with his parents and his 9-year-old sister Dawn. James Michael Moore is buried in Crittenden Memorial Park Cemetery in Marion, Arkansas. So we're going to go into the day when this all happened. So before we go into what occurred on the day, I will have to pre-warn you. I will be going into graphic detail, so you have been warned beforehand, and I do apologise if this is something you're not comfortable with. On the 5th of May, three 8-year-old boys named Steve Branch, Michael Moore, and Christopher Byers were reported missing in West Memphis, Arkansas. The first report to the police was made by Byers' adopted father, John Mark Byers, around 7 p.m. The boys were allegedly last seen together by 3 neighbours who have said the boys were seen playing together around 6:30 p.m. the evening they disappeared and seeing Terry Hobbs. which was Steve Branch's stepfather. Now, he was meant to be calling them to come home. The initial police searches made that night were limited, apparently. Friends and neighbours also conducted a search that night, which included a visit to the location where the bodies were later found. A more thorough police search for the children began around 8 a.m. on the 6th of May, led by the Crittenden County Search and Rescue personnel. Searches canvassed all of West Memphis, but focused primarily on Robin Hood Hills, where the boys were reported last seen. Despite a shoulder-to-shoulder search of Robin Hood Hills by a human chain, searchers found no sight of the missing boys. Also, I'm going to leave this for people who are watching this live. I'm going to leave the responsibility with Adam. I apologise, but if people get confused on what we're talking about, are you alright briefly explaining that this is a true crime podcast and we are literally talking about a true crime case if they do get confused when they join? Had to point that out, I'm so sorry. So, around 1:45 p.m, juvenile parole officer Steve Jones spotted a boy's black shoe floating in a muddy creek that led to a major drainage canal in Robin Hood Hills. A subsequent search of the ditch revealed the bodies of 3 boys. They had been, I apologise, again, graphic detail we're about to go into. The boys had been stripped naked and were hog-tied with their own shoelaces, their right ankles tied to their right wrists behind their back, the same with their left arms and legs. The clothing was found in the creek, some of it twisted around sticks that had been thrust into the muddy ditch bed. The clothing was mostly turned inside out. 2 pairs of the boys' underwear were never recovered, and Christopher Byard had lacerations to various parts of his body and mutilation to his lower area. I do not have to go into detail about what I'm going to be talking about there. Which is horrific.
I mean, you know, I feel for people in the law, or I don't know what was the exact title. Well, I guess police in this case, or whoever finds, you know, finding a body is one thing, but ending up finding kids dead in front of you must have the greatest amount of PTSD that comes with that. I can't even fathom that, because there's a few times myself I've thought, holy fuck, imagine if one day I just come across like a dead body. I think I would just like freak out and never recover. But like one thing, you know, is seeing a body but having to see a young kid, especially how brutal you've described that. That's absolutely fucking, you know, that's like stuff that you like almost see in a horror movie where you think, oh, that someone's mind's gone crazy, and like the horror movie director's gone, yeah, that'll be great, we'll have that in a film and that'll be good. You don't think that something like that could happen like in reality, so it's so fucking and then there's one thing seeing that and then having to tell people, being like, we found this, and then the other person at the end of the phone's like, what? Yeah, so I've just found 3 young kids dead like this, and then your heart just sinks. It's like, and then like the seriousness level goes from 0 to 100 so quick when you hear that shit, and then it's just like, well, not like immediate panic for the entire of the like the entirety of the US, but you know what I mean. It's just like panic stations for the police to be like, shit, someone's just murdered 3 kids. This is serious. We need to start like fucking. Well, you can't tell people like straight away. But you need to start like getting other officers and shit on the ball to be like, shit, this shit's serious.
Yeah. And
that's what. And then it's like a creek as well, which is basically just a tiny shallow bit of water, which will be off. Well, not in the public sight. So, you know, the fact that they've just stumbled across that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh dear, that's fucking horrible.
So the autopsies by forensic pathologist Frank J. Peretti indicated that Christopher Byers died of multiple injuries, while Moore and Branch died of multiple injuries and drowning. Police initially suspected the boys had been... Oh, I mean, on TikTok you can't say the words, so raped. They were sexually assaulted. Sorry, I'm going to just say that. They were sexually assaulted. However, later expert testimony disputed this. So they thought that they had been, but then later on they were like, actually, no, we don't think they were. Which I don't know how you do. Like, surely that would be quite clear. But I'm not a pathologist, so I wouldn't know.
I'm not either.
I'm not a pathologist, so I'm not going to know if that is quite easy to detect, but I would think it would be quite obvious, but then again.
You'd think so, but I'm trying to imagine how. Well, I guess when you discover anyone who's been murdered, the first thing is assessing the body, but then thinking to yourself, okay, what's happened here? And then thinking, is this exactly what's happened, before you start making some wild statement of that's how it is. And then you realise, oh crap, I've just said all this stuff, and that wasn't the case.
Yeah. So, trace amounts of DNA were found on a pair of pants recovered from the scene. Prosecution experts claim Byers' wounds were the result of a knife attack and that he had been purposely castrated by the murderer. Defense experts claim the injuries were most likely the result of post-mortem animal attacks. So they think that some of the injuries would have been beforehand, but some of the injuries might have happened after they had died by animals in the woods, which would check out as well. But again,
so like animals afterwards have kind of just...
Yeah.
How do I say it? Not like eaten away at it, but like the corpses were there and the animals kind of just...
As horrendous as it is to say, nature would have took its course.
Well, yes.
But that's basically what would happen.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to say that animals are like stupid and don't know what the hell's going on, but animals are just animals. And as humans, you know what's right and what's wrong, but as an animal, there isn't that level of just like, oops. Like if my cat ended up eating a spider, he was just like, oh, that was food. But he didn't realise, oh crap, I've just eaten another being. Oh well, there's no sense of that. So animals would have just seen them there and then just done what they probably would have normally done, but they don't know, oh hang on, that's a human, oops, I shouldn't be doing that. And it's weird to say that, but you know what I mean. When you see other animals being cannibals and eating other animals, and all sorts of stuff, they just do that without a shed of thought because they don't have an advanced brain. Well, depending on the animal. I know monkeys and stuff are getting very smart now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Animals don't have as smart of a brain, so they just do that. And
animals in the woods won't have that human connection of a brain.
Well, yeah, they didn't see them three bodies and think, uh-oh, these are three kids that have been murdered. I don't know what they would have thought, depending on what animals it was. I don't know what animals you get in the area of the West Memphis, but you know what I mean. They would. There's no second thought of just being like, uh-oh. No, they're just going to do whatever. So coming to the bodies and thinking, oh, crap, they've been here for a while and animals have gone through, makes it a little worse because I'm just kind of picturing what might have happened there, and that's horrible.
So, police believe that the boys were assaulted and killed at the location where they were found. Critics argued that the assault at least was unlikely to have occurred at the creek, so there's a little bit of debate there. Byers was the only victim with drugs in his system, but he was prescribed Ritalin in January 1993 as part of a treatment for an attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So ADHD.
Oh, is that what Ritalin does?
Yeah, so the initial autopsy report describes the drug as something completely different. Let me try and say the drug. Carbamazepine, and the dosage at a subtherapeutic level. So basically, it calms him down. But that's what you'd be taking for ADHD if you had the hyperactive ADHD anyway.
Okay, it makes sense because I've heard Ritalin before. Well, if anyone knows me, they know what I'm going to say. On a steady diet of soda pop and Ritalin, Jesus of Suburbia. And I always heard that lyric and thought, I have no idea what Ritalin does. So now I know what it is used for.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's a cool lyric in Jesus of Suburbia right at the beginning. But I now understand what it's used for.
Yeah, so His father said that Byers may not have taken his prescription on the 5th of May 1993, but he cannot confirm if he had or hadn't. But either way, that was found in his system. At the time of their arrests, Jesse Miskelly was 17 years old, Jason Baldwin was 16 years old, and Damien Eccles was 18 years old. Jason and Damien had been previously arrested for vandalism and shoplifting, and Jesse had a reputation for his temper and for engaging in fistfights with other teenagers at school. Jesse and Damien had dropped out of high school, however Jason earned high grades and demonstrated a talent for drawing and sketching, and was encouraged by one of his teachers to study graphic design in college, so he stayed. Damien and Jason were close friends and bonded over their similar tastes in music and fiction, and over their shared distaste for the prevailing cultural climate of West Memphis, situated in the Bible Belt.
I realised I should say, well, now you mentioned that, when I was Googling West Memphis, I did come across a Bible shop that was selling Bible books, and
wouldn't it just be the Bible?
Well, wait, no, where was it? No, it was something to...
Bible books. I thought there was only one. There was only one fucking book for that shit.
Like,
I know there's multiple books on Christianity, but I genuinely thought that, like, the Bible, there was only one.
Biblio.
I know there's a kid's version.
Yeah, no, where are we?
I was given a kid's version when I was really, really little.
No, because it was near here where I saw it. Is that where I dropped first? I didn't. Oh God, it's so high. This is the thing when you try and traverse in the US. It's just buildings are so far apart because they just don't have they don't have a tiny country. Their country's fucking huge, so they just have to space stuff out to make it up. But there was a place where it was something to do with Bible. I don't know where it was. It was definitely next to like a church or something, which ended up being blurred on Google Maps. I do not know why. I can't find it. It was somewhere new. Excuse me. But it said something to do with Bibles and books, so maybe this part's quite religious. I'm not sure. I know some parts of the US are extremely religious, so no, it's down this way. And I'm not saying areas that are religious. Here we go. I found it. I can traverse my way around West Memphis if I'm ever there. Where is it here? Yeah, Couples Bible Bookshop. Now celebrating 46 years, praise the Lord. Open and Jesus on the front. And there's a rainbow on the side. But yeah, it said Bible shop, bookshop. So I'm assuming they don't just sell the Bible, but there's angels at the front of there. But Couples, if you want your fix on the bloody Bible, there it is. But I guess, I don't know if that's a thing of goth culture. They just end up hating on religion or whatnot.
But
that was the thing as well. I guess they got labelled as Satanists. If one of them had said, I just don't like the Bible, that doesn't instantly make someone a Satanist. No. Or just doesn't have religion. I feel like people do that as well. They go, oh, well, you don't like God, that means you're a Satanist. I mean, I don't believe in God, I'm an atheist. It doesn't make me a Satanist. But I feel like the media just would have went, oh, well, they didn't like anything religious. Oh, that just fuels the fire to them being a Satanist.
So, Damien's family were really poor. They received frequent visits from social workers, and he rarely attended school before he dropped out. He and a girlfriend actually had run off and later broken into a trailer during a rainstorm, and they were arrested, though only Damien was charged with burglary. So they didn't just break in for shelter, they literally broke in to go steal shit. Damien spent several months in a mental health facility in Arkansas and afterward received full disability status from the Social Security Administration. During Damien's trial, Dr. George W. Woods testified that he suffered from serious mental illnesses characterized by grandiose and perceptory delusions, auditory and visual hallucinations, and disordered thought processes, substantial lack of insight, and chronic incapacitating mood swings. At his death penalty sentencing hearing, Damien's psychologist reported that months before the murders, Damien had claimed that he had obtained superpowers by drinking human blood. At the time of his arrest, he was working part-time with a roofing company and expecting a child of his girlfriend, Dominique Tier. So I'm going to guess the human blood thing might not have been fully true.
I mean, I don't drink human blood because
Same.
who the fuck does that? And I can tell you don't get powers from that.
No.
I mean, I don't know who told you that, but you don't get powers
No, you didn't.
from drinking human blood. So don't go do that. Ew. I don't know why people do that. I don't know why people do that though.
Some people actually do it as well, because we literally covered a case before, which was the worst case that I'm going to say we have ever covered on this podcast, which was Richard Trenton Chase, and that was horrendous.
Yeah.
That was the worst case I've ever researched in my life, and he did a lot of that, and he was...
I swear someone else on that My Strange Addiction had a...
Oh, wasn't it
blood...
like her and her husband? So they
drank each other's...
Yeah, okay.
Drank each other's blood, but I
genuinely, I occasionally watch My Strange Addiction clips to make myself feel better about myself. I feel like it's
drinking blood, eating ashes, which that one's stupid because they've run out of ashes, eating glass, addicted to bee stings,
eating foam mattresses,
addicted to the car,
eating your sofa.
I mean, the glass one was stupid because I'm pretty sure in that one he goes, I just do it as like a party trick, but also, eating part of the TV remote, coffee enemas. That thing was fucking...
I know people who've done coffee enemas as well,
Yeah, I mean, I like enema of the state, but I don't like coffee enemas. But I don't know what conclusion you start drinking blood and going, I can't even believe to think what that would even taste like. I mean, we've all kind of technically tasted blood if you've had a cut and you've instantly gone to, suck away the bit of blood to be like, ow.
Done that. That's normal. Actually drinking the blood is a completely different ballpark.
If you're drinking a shit ton of blood, the only explanation I can think of is that you're the Count. And that's it. And even then, I don't think the Count was showing drinking blood on Sesame Street. 1 cup of blood. 2 cup... Sorry, I like doing that impression. But, don't drink... Bleh.
No, don't drink blood, people. It shouldn't have to be a thing that we have to say, but please don't.
I wonder... Can I just say, I wonder what superpowers he thought he'd get from drinking blood.
Turning into a bat and being able to fly, maybe? I don't know.
You know how, because obviously now people are like, if you get bit by a spider, you'll get this Spider-Man's powers, because, well, the film showed that. So that's that. But I don't know what he thought. Well, if I drink blood, am I going to be immortal? Does that mean I can never die? I can heal my own wounds? That's some like Percy Jackson. Pretty sure it's Percy Jackson when you could heal yourself with the water or whatnot. But like, obviously, can I fly? I'm going to get wings because the extra blood, I don't know what it does. I'm going to turn into a bat.
I don't know.
Wouldn't that be similar to like a wolf though? When the moon comes out, you just like morph into a tiny bat and fly away.
I don't know. So early in the investigation, the West Memphis Police Department briefly regarded the 2 West Memphis teenagers as suspects, Chris Morgan and Brian Holland, both with drug offence histories. So they accused other people before they got to these 3. They had abruptly left for Oceanside, California 4 days after the bodies were discovered. Morgan was presumed to be at least casually familiar with all 3 murdered boys, having previously driven an ice cream truck route in their neighbourhood. They were arrested in Oceanside on the 17th of May 1993, and Morgan and Holland both took polygraph exams administered by California police, which whenever there's a case and they say, they did a polygraph test, I'm like, I don't see a polygraph test as like decent enough evidence, to be completely honest. Like,
Is that a polygraph? It's like a lie detector.
Yeah, but it's bullshit.
Oh no, often incorrectly referred to as a lie detector test.
But it's just like,
I don't know how true they really are. I've never taken one.
Where they hook it up to your pulse and go based on that. And it's like, mate, I get nerves at the best of times. I'd be fucked on anything, me.
Yeah.
But that's why I don't ever see them as like a viable thing. But they're still used. But they basically they took the polygraph test. Examiners reported that both men's charts indicated deception when they denied involvement in the murders. During subsequent questioning, Morgan claimed a long history of drug and alcohol use, along with blackouts and memory lapses. He claimed that he might have killed the victims, but quickly recanted this part of his statement.
This is just a random Brian Holland, I assume, because again...
Yes, it's a different Brian. It's a random Brian Holland.
Yeah, because if it's Dexter from The Offspring, that's the first I'm fucking hearing that, because that's the Brian Holland I know. Because that's his actual name. It's not fucking Dexter. Yeah, but this is in the 90s. I'm pretty sure you would have known about this by this point. Well, hey, there's some stuff that celebrities can do, and they can hide it under the thing.
Yeah, but
she said Brian Holland, I was like, I swear to God, it better not be. And I know that's California, and this is in West Memphis, but people can get around in the US. It's not like you can't get around.
I did just say that they fucked off to California.
No, they can't be. Wait, no, it wouldn't be. Well, if they went to like the Garden Grove area or wherever.
Oceanside.
Where? That's where
right,
Oceanside.
You can go do this. You can all go do that. California police sent blood and urine samples from Morgan and Holland to the West Memphis Police Department, but there was no indication West Memphis police investigated Morgan or Holland as suspects following their arrest in California. The relevance of Morgan's recanted statement would later be debated in trial, but it was eventually barred from admission as evidence, which, okay.
In between San Diego and Huntington Beach, so it could be, but it's not. Let's clarify this now. It's not Dexter Holland. It's not associated with The Offspring. It's just similar name.
So, police officers James Sudbury and Steve Jones felt that the entire crime had cult overtones, and that Damien Eccles might be a suspect because he had an interest in occultism, and Jones felt Damien was capable of murdering children. I don't know how you look at a guy who's done mostly just shoplifting and vandalism and just thought, yeah, no, he could do that, you know. Yeah, no, he looks like the type. No, he doesn't. How can you tell that someone looks the type?
That's such a weird statement to say, as if there's been so many people who've killed children throughout history that you can kind of determine what a child killer would look like. Yeah. That, you know, like, you can look at someone and go, oh, they're like the type of person that would probably enjoy football, and then that's fair because a shit ton of people like football, and you can kind of tell by the way someone looks. Or if someone looked at, I guess you, for example, which people do all the time, they could probably go, oh, she probably likes this band. That's fair because you're dressing the way that would indicate you like that. I don't know how you can look at someone and go, you know, they might be the type of person that would kill a child. Like, that people killing children has not happened that much for people to make an assumption of what a child killer would look like. Like, someone who looks like they're in their 70s could be a child killer, and then a teenager who looks like nerd glasses, got spots all over his face. You could say the same thing there, but then it's like, well, how does that work?
Yep.
I'm baffled at how they said, yeah, that looks like the type of person. I mean, anyone can do fucking anything. There's no specific look. Only with certain serial killers, and I mention this all the time, the glasses tended to be a trend where they wore them, and that was just a thing. But, like, you know, anyone can kill someone doesn't mean they have to be this specific way.
I mean, no,
it makes it worse. It makes it worse if they end up being like, oh, well, if they look like that, that means they're that, because then you can't dress like that, because then you get associated with, obviously, like we've mentioned before, anyone that wears a trench coat. You can't wear a trench coat without someone saying, well, you're just the way to show up at school, aren't you now?
I mean, yeah.
No, generally, someone in my school wore a trench coat at times, and people made that joke.
Oh,
he wore it like once or twice.
I've got a black leather trench coat. I've had that joke thrown at me a few times.
Yeah, but honestly, you can't, because people have just gone, oh, well, people did it with that, and that is what someone who would commit a crime would wear or look like that.
Like, just no. So the police interviewed Damien on the 17th of May, 2 days after the bodies were discovered, and during a polygraph examination, he denied any involvement. The polygraph examiner claimed that Damien's chart indicated deception. On the 9th of May, during a formal interview by Detective Bryn Ridge, Eccles mentioned that one of the victims had wounds to the lower region. Law enforcement viewed this knowledge as incriminating. Mate, it's a small fucking town. Without a shadow of a doubt, that's been fucking spread around. After a month had passed with little progress to the case, police continued to focus their investigation on Damien, interrogating him more frequently than any other person. Nonetheless, they claimed he was not regarded as a direct suspect, but a source of information. On the 3rd of June, the police interrogated Jesse Kelly Jr. despite his reported IQ of 72 and his status as a minor. Jesse was questioned alone. His parents were not present during the interrogation. As a minor, they technically don't... That should not have happened, technically. Jesse's father gave permission for Miss Kelly to go with the police, but did not explicitly give permission for his son to be questioned or interrogated. Jesse was questioned for roughly 12 hours. Only 2 segments totaling 46 minutes were recorded, and Jesse quickly recanted his confession, citing intimidation, coercion, fatigue, and veiled threats from police. They questioned him for 12 hours, and only 46 minutes were recorded. That should, again, not have happened. You're meant to record the entire fucking thing, or get a witness in there as well, to everything that's being said. You can't have him in the interrogation room for 12 hours and have a big majority of it, 97% of it, not be on file or recorded in the slightest. You can't do that. Though he was informed of his Miranda rights, Jesse later claimed that he did not fully understand them. Bear in mind, he's got an IQ of 72. In 1996, the Arkansas Supreme Court ruled that Jesse's confession was voluntary and that he did in fact understand the Miranda warning and its consequences. In the words of Johnny Depp, were you there? Can you say this for sure, that he understood it? How do you know he understood it? He said that he clearly didn't. Portions of Jesse's statements to the police were leaked to the press and reported on the front page of Memphis Commercial Appeal before any of the trials began, which again should not be a thing. That's a big no. I feel like everyone knows that's a big no. You don't leak shit to the press. That does not help the case in court in the slightest. It fucks it up, if anything.
Yeah, more than likely, when the press get in there, they print that shit, and more than likely, don't check.
Yeah, and also it makes it a bit more harder in court. It makes it way more difficult. It makes the case harder to do. Shortly after Jesse's first confession, police arrested Damien and his close friend Jason. 8 months after his original confession, on the 17th of May 1994, Jesse made another statement to police. His lawyer, Dan Stidham, remained in the room and continually advised Jesse to not say anything. Jesse ignored this advice and went on to detail how the boys were abused and murdered. Thing is, we got that written down, but we don't know the context and why he was saying it. Stidham, who later elected to a multiple judgeship, has written a detailed critique of what he asserts are major police errors and misconceptions during their investigation. Stidham made similar comments during a radio show interview in May 2010. Now we're going to go into a lady who did not make things any better. A woman called Vicky Hutchison was a new resident of West Memphis and would play an important role in the investigation, though she would later recant her testimony, claiming her statements were fabricated due in part to coercion from the police. This kind of fucks it up a lot. On the 6th of May 1993, before the victims were found, Vicky took a polygraph exam by Detective Don Bray at the Marion Police Department to determine whether or not she had stolen money from her West Memphis employer. Her young son Aaron was also present and proved such a distraction that Bray was unable to administer the polygraph. Aaron, a playmate of the murdered boys, mentioned to Bray that the boys had been killed at the playhouse. When the bodies proved to have been discovered near where Aaron indicated, Bray asked Aaron for further details, and Aaron claimed that he had witnessed the murders committed by Satanists who spoke Spanish. Arthur's further statements were wildly inconsistent, and he was unable to identify Jason, Damien, or Jesse from photo lineups, and there was no playhouse at the location that Aaron had indicated. A police officer leaked portions of Aaron's statement to the press, contributing to the growing belief that the murders were part of a satanic rite, which, as a police officer, you should not be leaking shit to the press about an ongoing investigation. That should be a big no. I'm pretty sure that is literally in the whole thing when you are researching a case, is to not tell the press anything during an ongoing case.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That is a big no. I don't know. I mean, to be fair, we're saying this as people in the UK. Like, that could be a big no here. I know for a fact that you cannot do that here. I don't know what it's like in the US.
But I feel like one of those things that, as a police officer, they'd be briefed on that when being hired or when trained, they would say, look, don't do this, because you're liable to lose your job. Because it feels like it's something that would more than likely lose you your job. And it probably would over here. And
yeah, you'd lose your job like so quick over here for doing that.
Maybe it's different in the US, but it feels like it's just a general thing that in any country you just shouldn't do that.
I mean, yeah. So, on or about the 1st of June 1993, Hutchison agreed to police suggestions to place hidden microphones in her home during an encounter with Damien. Jesse agreed to introduce Hutchison to Damien, and during their conversation, Hutchison reported that Damien made no incriminating statements. Police said the recording was inaudible, but Hutchison claimed the recording was audible. On the 2nd of June 1993, she told police about 2 weeks after the murders were committed, she, Damien, and Jesse attended a Wiccan meeting in Turrell, Arkansas. She claimed that at the Wiccan meeting, a drunken Damien openly bragged about killing the 3 boys. Jesse was first questioned on the 3rd of June 1993, a day after her apparent confession. She was unable to recall the Wiccan meeting location and did not name any other participants in the meeting. She was never charged with theft, and she claimed that she had implicated Damien and Jesse to avoid facing criminal charges and to obtain a reward for the discovery of the murders. Well, murderers. So this bitch made a false confession about something that never happened because she didn't want to get in shit for stealing stuff off a boss.
That's so fucking wild. Making up some bullshit just for that.
She literally told them a story that never happened just so she wouldn't get arrested for theft.
Do people not realise when they make fucking up stories on that level, it is fucking dead set serious? And we talked about this a few times in some of the cases we covered in the UK, where people just thought it was funny to make BS leads on certain cases, and it's like, why? Surely in anyone's right mind they realise if they do this and then they get caught for it, or they find out people are like, you just fucking made up this shit up, that you're not going to come out of this safe. You're going to be in fucking so much trouble. And why? Considering what the case is, why would you make up shit like this? That's just wrong and dehumanizing and morally wrong to do shit like that.
Yep. So Jesse was tried separately and Damien and Jason were tried together in 1994. Under the Bruton rule, Jesse's confession could not be admitted against his co-defendants, thus he was tried separately. All 3 defendants pleaded not guilty, because, you know, they didn't fucking do it. During Jesse's trial, Richard Offshee, an expert on false confessions and police coercion, and professor of sociology at UC Berkeley, testified that the brief recording of Jesse's interrogation was a classic example of police coercion. Critics have also stated that Jesse's various confessions were in many respects inconsistent with each other, as well as with the particulars of the crime scene and murder victims, including, for example, of admission that Jesse watched Damien, one of the boys, sexually assault one of the boys. Sorry, I hate saying that word, but sexually assault one of the boys. Police had initially suspected that the victims had been sexually assaulted because their anuses were dilated. I'm sorry, I have to say it. However, there was no forensic evidence indicating that the murdered boys had been sexually assaulted. Apparently, the dilation is a normal post-mortem condition. On the 5th of February, so basically they looked at a normal post-mortem condition and assumed the worst and placed the blame on one of the lads without any fucking evidence that he had done that in the slightest. How the fuck did you get there? How did you get to that conclusion? Ah, Jesus Christ. On the 5th of May 1994, Jesse was convicted by a jury of one count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. The court sentenced him to life plus 40 years in prison. His conviction was appealed, but the Arkansas Supreme Court affirmed the conviction. 3 weeks later, Damien and Jason went on trial. The prosecution accused the 3 young men of committing a satanic murder with no fucking evidence to back it up. The prosecution called Dale W. Griffiths, a graduate of the unaccredited Columbia Pacific University, as an expert in the occult to testify the murders were a satanic ritual. Alright. On the 19th of March 1994, Damien and Jason were found guilty on 3 counts of murder. The court sentenced Damien to death and Jason to life. A trial, the defense team argued that news articles from the time could have been the source for Damien's knowledge about the mutilation, and Damien said his knowledge was limited to what was on TV. Yeah, because you're literally leaking everything to the freaking press 24/7. No wonder everyone knows what's happened. The prosecution claimed that Damien's knowledge was nonetheless too close to the facts, since there was no public reporting of drowning or that one victim had been mutilated more than the others. Damien testified that Detective Ridge's description of their earlier conversation regarding those particular details was inaccurate. Mara Leverett, an investigative journalist and the author of Devil's Knot, argues that Damien's information may have come from police leaks, such as Detective Gitchell's comments to Mark Byers, that circulated amongst the local public. Like I said, small town, things go around. The defense team objected when the prosecution attempted to question Damien about his past violent behaviours, but the defense objections were overruled. There has been widespread criticism of the handling of the crime scene by the police. Jesse's former attorney Dan Stidham cites multiple substantial police errors at the crime scene, characterising it as literally trampled, especially the creek bed. The bodies, he said, had been removed from the water before the coroner arrived to examine the scene and determined the state of rigor mortis, allowing the bodies to decay on the creek bank and to be exposed to sunlight and insects. The police did not telephone the coroner until almost 2 hours after the discovery of the floating shoe, resulting in a late appearance by the coroner. Officials failed to drain the creek in a timely manner and secure possible evidence in the water. Stidham has called the coroner's investigation extremely substandard. There was a small amount of blood found at the scene that was never tested. According to HBO's documentary series Paradise Lost, the child murders at Robin Hood Hills and Paradise Lost 2 Revelations, no blood was found at the crime scene, indicating that the location where the bodies were found was not necessarily the location where the murders actually happened. After the initial investigation, the police failed to control disclosure of information and speculation about the crime scene. So basically, they had no evidence in the slightest, no DNA evidence that linked any of the 3 teenagers to the crimes in the slightest. They just tried them for fuck all, is what I'm reading.
It's bad.
Which is ridiculous. There's literally no evidence. They did no DNA testing on any of the blood that was found. They didn't even test the blood that was at the scene, and they looked at these 3 lads, interrogated them with information that they had given them, saying that they had confessed to it, and charged them based on that, which is insane.
I mean, that makes the wrongful conviction even worse, when they literally went off nothing, and then convicted them, and convicting them of what the sentence they got makes it even more worse. Like, you'd think with a case this serious that just convicting them off basically nothing wouldn't happen because that would be ridiculous, and that, you know, a case like this needs to be taken seriously where the right person needs to be held responsible because it's 3 young kids that have died.
Yep. According to Leverett, police reports were a mess. To call them disorderly would be putting it mildly. Leverett speculated that the small local police force was overwhelmed by the crime, which was unlike any that they had ever investigated. Police refused an unsolicited offer of aid and consultation from the violent crimes experts of the Arkansas State Police, and critics suggested that this was due to the West Memphis Police Department being under investigation by the Arkansas State Police for suspected theft from the Crittenden County Drug Task Force. So, West Memphis Police are not looking good in the slightest. Leverett further noted that some of the physical evidence was stored in paper sacks obtained from a supermarket rather than in containers of known and controlled origin. When police speculated about who committed the crime, the juvenile probation officer assisting at the scene of the murders speculated that Damien was capable of committing the murders, stating, "It looks like Damien Eccles finally killed someone." The guy's literally done a bit of shoplifting and vandalism, and you've literally looked at that and gone, well, kind of saw this coming. It's like, no. I look at people who do vandalism and shoplifting and think, you're the type of person to continue doing vandalism and shoplifting, not fucking murder. Brent Turvey, a forensic scientist and criminal profiler, stated in the film Paradise Lost 2 that human bite marks could have been left on at least one of the victims. Could have. However, these potential bite marks were first noticed in photographs years after the trials and were not inspected by a board-certified medical examiner until 4 years after the murders. The defence's expert testified that the mark in question was not an adult bite mark, whilst experts put on by the state concluded that there was no bite mark at all. So which is it? Was there a bite mark? Was there not? We don't know. The state's experts had examined the actual bodies for any marks, and others conducted expert photo analysis of injuries. Upon further examination, it was concluded that if these bite marks were bite marks, they did not match the teeth of any of the 3 convicted. So then again, you got another load of no evidence that they ever did it. It is literally bullshit that they're going, oh, there might have been bite marks. Actually, we don't know if there were. Actually, if there was, it looks like there might have been, but they don't match those 3. So, it's so dumb. Obviously, in May 1994, after being sentenced, the 3 defenders appealed their convictions. The convictions were upheld on direct appeal. In June 1996, Jesse's lawyer, Dan Stidham, was preparing an appeal to the US Supreme Court. In 2007, Damien petitioned for a retrial based on a statute permitting post-conviction testing of DNA evidence due to the technological advances made since 1997, which might prove exoneration for the wrongfully convicted. The petition failed when the original trial judge, Judge David Burnett, disallowed presentation of this information in his court. Thing is, you're literally going to the guy that sentenced you. He's not going to be happy that he got it wrong, so he's probably turned it down due to his own little fucking fragile ego. This ruling was in turn thrown out by the Arkansas Supreme Court as to all 3 defendants on the 4th of November 2010. John Mark Byers, the adopted father of victim Christopher Byers, now this is a bit interesting. We're going to go into John Mark Byers because he did a lot of things that looked a bit suspicious that people didn't look into too much. So John Mark Byers, who, if you remember, was the adopted father of Christopher Byers, he gave a knife to cameraman Doug Cooper, who was working with documentary makers Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky while filming the first Paradise Lost feature documentary. The knife was a folding hunting knife manufactured by Kershaw. According to the statements given by Berlinger and Sinofsky, Cooper informed them of his receipt of the knife on the 19th of December 1993. After the documentary crew returned to New York, Berlinger and Sanofsky were reported to have discovered what appeared to be blood on the knife. HBO executives ordered them to return the knife to the West Memphis Police Department, and the knife was not received by the West Memphis Police Department until the 8th of January 1994. Byers initially claimed the knife had never been used, but obviously there was blood found on the knife. And he then changed his statement and said that he had only used it once, and that was to cut deer meat. Why didn't you clean it? When told the blood matched both his and Chris's blood type, however, Byers said that he had no idea how the blood might have gone onto the knife. Naturally, he was questioned and interrogated about why his and his adopted son's blood type was found on this knife, despite his claim that he has never really used it. West Memphis police suggested to Byers that he might have left the knife out accidentally, and Byers agreed with this. I find it insane that they have found this knife that might be evidence to these murders, and they said to the guy that they're questioning about this, oh, maybe you left it on the side and your son found it there, and that's how his blood ended up on the knife. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna go with that. That sounds like a good thing to say. That sounds insane to me. Why have you literally just given him an alibi? This annoys me. Byers later stated that he may have cut his thumb. How do you not know if you cut your thumb or not? How do you not know? Further testing of the knife produced inconclusive results about the source of the blood. Uncertainty remained due to the small amount of blood, and because both John Mark Byers and Chris Byers had the same blood type. Byers agreed to and passed a polygraph test about the murders during the filming of Paradise Lost 2 Revelations, but the documentary indicated that Byers was under the influence of several prescription medications that could have affected the test results, because I'm gonna guess if you take certain prescription medication that the whole job is to slow your heart rate down, you're just gonna it's gonna make it inconclusive. I feel like you should not be under a polygraph test if you have been taking prescription drugs that does that. Surely that is just natural logic. But then again, I'm just a girl that does a podcast. How should I know fucking logic? Following their convictions, Damien, Jesse, and Jason submitted imprints of their teeth. These were compared to the alleged bite marks on Stevie Branch's forehead that had not been mentioned in the original autopsy or trial. No matches were found. John Mark Byers had his teeth removed in 1997, however, after the first trial, but before an imprint could be made, which seems weirdly conveniently timed. Like, the other three lads have given imprints of their teeth to prove that they don't match the bite marks found on the bodies. But the guy who's looking, the adopted dad that's looking a bit suspicious, conveniently have had his teeth removed after the first trial. I don't know, that sounds really fishy to me. Could just be like coincidence, but it sounds a bit weird. He has claimed that both the seizure medication he was taking caused periodontal disease, and that he planned the removal because of other kinds of dental problems which had troubled him for years. I'm still a bit suspicious about him. After an expert examined autopsy photos and noted what he thought might be the imprint of a belt buckle on Byers' body, the elder Byers, the adopted dad, revealed to the police that he had hit his stepson with a belt buckle shortly before he disappeared. The man, if he's innocent, if the adopted dad did not do the crime, He is really, really not helping himself any way, shape or form. Now, remember Vicky Hutcherson, the bitch that did a false claim that she knew who murdered the boys and the whole fake confession just so she could get out of not being arrested for taking money off a boss? Well, she's back again in October 2003. Now, she obviously played a giant part in the arrests of Jesse, Damien, and Jason, and gave an interview to the Arkansas Times in which she stated that every word she had given to the police was fabrication. Fabrication, in quotes. She further asserted that the police had implied that if she did not cooperate with them, they would take away her child. I feel like it's more, if we arrest you for the theft that you did with your boss, you're going to go to prison, so we're going to have to take away your kid after that. She said that when she visited the police station, employees had photographs of Damien, Jason, and Jesse on the wall and were using them as dart targets, which wouldn't shock me if that was true. She also claims that an audio tape the police said was unintelligible was perfectly clear and contained no incriminating statements. In 2007, DNA collected from the crime scene was tested. I don't know why it took you over 10 years to eventually test the DNA from the crime scene, but it did. None were found to match DNA from Damien, Jason, or Jesse. Shock. A hair was not consistent with Steve Branch's father, Terry Hobbs, and was found tied into the knots used to bind one of the victims. The prosecutor, while conceding that no DNA evidence tied the accused to the crime, said, "The state stands behind its convictions of Damien and his co-defendants. I don't know how you can stand behind the convictions of the three lads who are literally being proved by DNA to have not done it." Each to their own. Pamela Hobbs, on the 5th of May 2009, declared in the United States District Court, Eastern District of Arkansas's Western Division, said that one hair was consistent with the hair of Terry's friend David Jacoby, however. She said, additionally after the murders, my sister Jolynn McCory and I found in Terry's nightstand a knife that Stevie carried with him constantly and which I believed was with him when he died. It was a pocket knife that my father had given to Stevie, and Stevie loved that knife. I had been shocked that the police did not find it with Stevie when they found his body. I had always assumed that my son's murderer had taken the knife during the crime. I could not believe it was in Terry's things. He had never told me that he had it. Why are you not telling your wife that you have a knife that she thought was with her son the entire time? What is so wrong in telling her the truth? Also, my sister Jolynn told me that she saw Terry wash clothes, bed linens, and curtains from Stevie's room at an odd time around the time of the murders. There was additional new evidence discovered in 2007 that I cannot now recall. Why are the stepdads and adopted dads acting really suspicious? Like, really suspicious? Like, Jesus Christ.
I don't know. I mean, the worst thing you can do in any case is when they're not sure who's done it, and then you start doing something that's very suspicious, leads you more to being pinned on you. But like, if you're in any involvement of any case where they're like, well, you're some part of this case because you're either a family member or the victim, or you knew someone who is the main suspect, and you start doing suspicious stuff, it's the worst thing you can do. Especially in the one where, in this case, it's a wrongful conviction, where folk have been wrongly convicted, and you start doing sus stuff.
In 2013, written statements about two men, Billy Wayne Stewart and Benny Guy, were introduced in the court. They both claimed they have had information on the case linking Terry Hobbs to the murders, but apparently the information that they claimed to have was ignored by the police. Shock horror! I'm not even surprised that the police are being a pain in the ass. I'm not even shocked anymore. Nothing shocks me anymore. We've got, like, we're in season 2 of this podcast. Nothing shocks me anymore.
Man, we have talked about and discussed so much stuff now. But to be fair, though, there is a few times where I have heard stuff and I've gone fucking had to sit back a bit. But there's still so much stuff that comes out in cases where we're just like, oh fuck, not even talked about that yet. But the shock value isn't as big as it was at the start because there's so much stuff that we've talked about that is actually jaw hits the floor, clean out your ears. Did I just hear that correct?
In July 2008, it was revealed that Kent Arnold, the jury foreman on the Eccles-Baldwin trial, had discussed the case with an attorney prior to the beginning of the deliberations. Arnold was accused of advocating for the guilt of the West Memphis Three and sharing knowledge of inadmissible evidence, like the Jesse Miss Kelly statements with the other jurors. At the time, legal experts agreed that this issue could result in the reversal of the convictions of Jason Baldwin and Damien Eccles. In September 2008, attorney Daniel Stidham, who represented Jesse in 1994, testified at a post-conviction relief hearing. Stidham testified under oath that during the trial, Judge David Burnett erred by making an improper communication with the jury during its deliberations. Stidham overheard Judge Burnett discuss taking a lunch break with the jury foreman and heard the foreman reply that the jury was almost finished. He testified that Judge Burnett responded, "You'll need food for when you come back for sentencing," and that the foreman asked in return what would happen if the defendant was acquitted. Stidham said that the judge closed the door without answering. He testified that his own failure to put this incident on the court and his failure to meet the minimum requirements in state law to represent a defendant in a capital murder case was evidence of ineffective assistance of counsel and that Jesse's conviction should therefore be vacated. No wonder the judge was fully ignoring the appeal cases, because he's been fucking dodgy during the whole thing regardless. It's like, no, cannot have evidence come out about me. On the 29th of October 2007, papers were filed in federal court by Damien's defense lawyer seeking a retrial for his immediate release from prison. The filing cited DNA evidence linking Terry Hobbs to the crime scene and new statements from Hobbs' now ex-wife. Also presented in the filing was new expert testimony that the supposed knife marks on the victims, including the injuries to Byers' below area, were in fact the result of animal attacks after the bodies had been dumped. So it took them a very long time to realise actually a lot of the stuff on the bodies actually was due to animal attacks after they died, and not a satanic ritual. On the 10th September 2008, Circuit Court Judge David Burnett denied the request for a retrial, citing the DNA evidence as inconclusive. That ruling was appealed to the Arkansas Supreme Court, which heard oral arguments in the case on the 30th of September 2010. On the 4th of November 2010, the Arkansas Supreme Court ordered a lower judge to consider whether newly analysed DNA evidence might exonerate the three. The justices also instructed the lower court to examine claims of misconduct by the jurors who sentenced Damien Eccles to death and Jesse Miss Kelly and Jason Baldwin to life in prison. In early December 2010, David Burnett was elected to the Arkansas State Senate. Circuit Court Judge David Laser, who was selected to replace David Burnett and preside with the eventuary hearings mandated by the successful appeal. After weeks of negotiations, on the 19th of August 2011, Damien, Jason and Jesse were released from prison as part of a plea deal, making the hearings ordered by the Arkansas Supreme Court unnecessary. The three entered into Alford pre-deals. Stephen Braga, an attorney with Ropes and Gray, who took up Damien's defense on a pro bono basis beginning in 2009, negotiated the plea agreement with prosecutors. Under the deal, Judge David Laser vacated the previous convictions, including the capital murder convictions for Damien and Jason, and ordered a new trial. Each man then entered an Alford plea to lesser charges of first and second degree murder while verbally stating their innocence. Judge Laser then sentenced them to time served, a total of 18 years and 78 days, and they were given a suspended imposition of sentence of 10 years. If they're offered, they can be sent back to prison for 21 years. Factors cited by prosecutor Scott Ellington for agreeing to the plea deal included that 2 of the victims' families had joined the cause of defence, and that the mother of a witness who testified about Damien's confession had questioned her daughter's truthfulness, and that the state crime lab employee who collected fibre evidence at the Eccles and Baldwin homes after their arrests had died. As part of the plea deal, the 3 men cannot pursue civil action against the state for wrongful imprisonment. I feel like they should be able to, but that's just me. I feel like they should be able to go and pursue civil action because they were wrongfully imprisoned for a very long time. Many of the men's supporters and opponents who still believed them guilty were unhappy with the unusual plea deal. In 2011, supporters pushed Arkansas's Governor Mike Beebe to pardon Damien, Jason, and Jesse based on their innocence. Beebe said he would deny the request unless there was evidence showing someone else committed the murders. Prosecutor Scott Ellington said the Arkansas State Crime Laboratory would help seek other suspects by running searches on any DNA evidence produced in private laboratory tests during the defense team's investigation. This would include running the results through the FBI's combined DNA index system database. Ellington said that although he still considered the men guilty, the 3 would likely be acquitted if a new trial were held because of the powerful legal counsel representing them now, the loss of evidence over time, and the change of heart among some of the witnesses. Now, obviously, they've been released from prison. I've given you updates on where they are now in life. They're all living separately. None of them have contact with each other because they just don't simply want to. I think they want to move past that horrendous point in life where they spent years in prison for something that they just simply didn't do. But 3 films... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, but from photos, they've met up.
They met up for the film premieres.
Yeah, the film premieres, and there's photos of them holding their papers, 3 walk free.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, that's why I was confused and said they don't want contact. Obviously, they met up for the...
I mean, it's been over 10 years since they were released from prison.
Yeah.
A lot can happen in 10 years. They probably just thought, can we just move past this now?
Well, yeah, considering, it's not like something that they just want to... I mean, yes, they were friends, but I don't know after everything that's happened they still want to be friends and just, hang out with each other all the time, so go separate lives, do their own thing.
Also, they wouldn't have been kept in the same prisons. So,
yeah.
They probably also, at that point, not seen each other in a very long time.
Yeah.
So, the connection would have been gone anyway, most likely.
Yeah.
But if anyone's interested in learning more about this case other than re-listening to this episode, 3 films, one called Paradise Lost, The Child Murders at Robin Hood Hills, which is technically a documentary, and Paradise Lost 2, Revelations, and also Paradise Lost 3, Purgatory, directed by Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky, have documented this case and are strongly critical of the verdict. The films also marked the first time Metallica allowed their music to be used in a movie, which drew attention to the case. There have been a number of books about the case as well, also arguing that the suspects were wrongly convicted, such as Devil's Knot, which was eventually turned into a movie in 2013 by Mara Leverett, Blood of Innocence by Guy Reel, and The Last Pinnacle of the Sun, writings in support of the West Memphis Three, edited by Brett Alexander Savory and M.W. Anderson, and featuring dark fiction and non-fiction by well-known writers of speculative fiction. In 2005, Damien Eccles completed his memoir called Almost Home, Volume 1, offering his perspective of the case. A biography of John Mark Byers by Greg Day, named Untying the Knot, John Mark Byers and the West Memphis Three, was published in May 2012. Don't know why John Mark Byers has got our books, but because he looks a bit suspicious to me, but that's, yeah. But to this day, the actual murderers of the three boys is completely unknown. They do not know who actually did it, but there obviously is suspicion. A lot of people still think that Damien, Jason, and Jesse are guilty, despite evidence proving that they are not. And there is also suspicion into the adoptive fathers and stepfathers of the boys. But that is the case of the West Memphis Three.
Very interesting. I hadn't heard of this at all. And it's very interesting, quite a lot on the fact that usually when you talk about a wrongful conviction case, it's just one person, but this is three people that were wrongly convicted.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, but yeah, I hadn't known anything. And I always find it sad whenever we talk about a wrongful conviction case, because you know that so much of that person's life, in this case these person's lives, have been stripped from them, and they'll never get that back because of the mistake the law has made. And you can't, revert time and go back and, change all that. So what's happened, and then the amount of wrongful conviction cases when we cover them or when I hear about them, I always sit there and it's one of those things where it's just and you feel sad because you know that the law messed up and that someone's life is just that's it. There's no reverting. We can't go back. So much stuff happens and that's it. And then you sit here afterwards and go, you count yourself lucky that, you may have thought to yourself, I spent an entire day, I did nothing, that day was wasted. Think about people who've been wrongly convicted where most of their life has been stripped from them for something they didn't do.
Yeah, I think it's genuinely the fact that it was so simple to prove that they were innocent. It was so simple. It was all right there. The evidence that they didn't do it was just there. It was right in front of them. And the police just flat out refused to look at any of it.
Yeah, I granted I get when you are an officer in the police that coming to a conclusion in a case as brutal as this one is very difficult. But for you to make an assumption and say it's these three people, and then it wasn't them, and how do you come back from that to be like, oh, well, we kind of messed up, sorry. No, you've really thrown it in here, On a case this serious, you'd think that they'd make sure that, right, we're actually going to take this and try and see that we can get enough evidence to be like, this is definitely the person, and not just go off of this thing and then go, oh, it's them, because someone murdering someone's a pretty big deal. So you'd think that,
especially those
police would take all,
especially with how brutal the murders were.
Yeah, you'd think that police would take all the time where they get enough stuff to go, right, this is the person, because the last thing we want is too many cases of people being wrongly convicted when it looks like it's basically a half-assed attempt at going, yeah, well, we just want to have the case over and done with. It was these people. And the media's reaction as well is, the amount of backlash that the police get and loads of people would get from just the general public. Because I believe when I was Googling it, there was actually an album by Henry Rollins and the Rollins Band that was set up that artists recorded covers of songs for Black Flag songs so that the money raised would go towards the West Memphis Three. And I mean, what more can you do? You can't give back the time that was stripped away from them. The police can't go, oh, sorry, we only convicted you. Here's the life that you missed. It's just gone. They're victims, and there's nothing you can do. No amount of money, no amount of nothing will ever give them back what they lost. And that's what's so sad with this wrongful conviction cases, that no matter what you do, you just can't give them anything that would make up for what's happened. It's the worst thing.
No. It just baffles my brain, because all the evidence, all the DNA stuff is stuff that you normally do in the initial investigation, and they just did not do it. They literally did not analyze the bite marks. They didn't look at the blood. They didn't look at anything in the slightest, and they just went on confessions from people that they'd enticed to say certain things. They were like, maybe this could have happened. Oh yeah, you know what, that could have happened actually. Yeah, that sounds about right. That's just such bullshit. And also the fact that there's only 46 minutes of this interrogation with one of them, but he was being questioned for 12 hours. Where's the rest of it? Why is that not on file? That legally should have been on file. And you should not be going to the press with new things about the case. Especially, you can be like, oh, there has been progression in the case, and that you can say that and nothing else. But you can't give detailed confessions to the press until after it's been in court. You can't do that, but they did that anyway. It just annoys me how they did everything so wrong with it. But the three guys are now out of prison. They are living very full lives, and we hope that they are doing well. I hope mentally they are doing okay. Obviously, they're probably not, but we hope they are doing way better than they were. And we hope as well that you guys enjoyed this episode. For those who did watch this live and joined a bit late, it will be available on Spotify, obviously, and YouTube and all that kind of stuff, so don't worry about it. But also, we hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed this episode. It was a bit different, and we will see you next week with another episode. And to everyone else, we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.